Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Neil Haley Show. And wow, I'm just amazed finally that I can talk about issues that are not always education issues. And it's something that makes me really, really excited. Thanks to Bethel Park, BPTV, and then the Pittsburgh area. And now with the international syndication television and radio, we're able to do a dual broadcast. And I can talk about issues that are not just education. I can talk political issues, could talk sports, and all these different things. So I'm so excited. Welcome to the program, Walter Brasch. Thanks, Walter, for calling. You have a book on fracking. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Neil.
Oh, I mean, when I saw you send this press release out, I said, I have to have you on because what I'm hearing from so many people, fracking's safe, go ahead and do it, it's safe, it's going to help our economy. But through this book, you've done research that kind of says that's not true at all times, right?
Yeah, in Fracking Pennsylvania, what I do, and it's really about fracking America, but we focus on Pennsylvania because it's the center of the Marcellus Shale, which is in the boom. Too many people have said it's saving our economy. It's going to give us jobs. It's going to do this. It's going to make landowners rich. Well, those are all half-truths. What isn't being told is a couple things. One is that Governor Corbett in Pennsylvania has said it's going to bring in 200,000 more jobs.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
the best that they could figure out is maybe 30,000 jobs, and most of those are coming in from people from other states who are moving into Pennsylvania just for the work, and then they're moving on to other jobs. Often Texas and Oklahoma and New Mexico people are coming, but their taxes are going back to their home states. And the way they figured the
Wow.
200,000 is anybody that was impacted by gas, for instance, a waitress in a restaurant, they may get more work, so therefore more jobs. I figured that also had to include all the prostitutes that showed up at the man camps.
I mean, when they're talking about this, a lot of times they promise certain things just to say it's going to help the economy. And what have you seen? Who's making the money right now?
Right now, the oil companies. Now, it takes a lot of money to drill for the oil, but and because they over drilled and left a glut of gas, the gas prices have come down, but it's going back up because they're starting to export it and trying to get liquid natural gas into the Asian markets. But who's benefiting? Certainly, the homeowner is not benefiting a whole lot out of it. The landowners, they tend to be the larger landowners, so the people that have a lot of land that are leasing it to the oil and gas companies tend to get more benefit from it than the person with a quarter-acre lot or a one-acre lot. And these are just temporary because they keep getting promised this and this and this. But the reality is, after about 90 days, the production of oil and gas falls off. And within 3 years, there's not much left that's economic to drill. So the landowners that have basically allowed their land to be used and their ground that cannot produce crops for 3, 5, 10 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We're getting this problem with that. We're sacrificing some of our agriculture in order to get gas revenue. And they're finding out that the money that they got the first year really is not the same as they getting the second and third year.
And let's talk about the smaller homes. What are they making by allowing them to frack on their land? What do they make?
Very little. There's a minimum of 12.5% royalties for the gas, but that assumes that they have a well on the land. Nearby will be the large well pads. They're
Right.
sacrificing their peace of mind because of the noise to create the wells are it's very, very noisy. You've got compressor stations that are every few miles. You've got roads that are going to bisect land. You're going to get a couple hundred trucks per well site a day coming in and out. These are not just your average pickups. These are semis coming in and out. You've got deforestation, destroying the ecology, the balance of nature. You've got health problems that have been documented. And finally, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, which really seems to be a misnomer because they've certainly been more pro-industry friendly than regulatory, finally acknowledged there were over 240 specific incidents of gas drilling impacting local water supplies and wells. And that's what we know of. We've got on file more than the DEP has. And their incidents are a little bit not accurate either, because they consider an incident anything, like if it impacts 10 wells, that's still one incident. So the number of wells is far greater than 240.
Let's jump back to the environmental part later, but let's first of all look at the money is very little, and then look at health concerns for the people in the house. What have we heard so far from them? They lease their land, and any health concerns, especially when we see the spin on the other side. Everything is fine. It is safe. Go ahead and do this. So more oil companies can come in and say, hey, I want to lease this land. So tell us.
What's happening is that you're right about that. The companies say that there are no health problems, but there are health problems. They've been documented. Now, in Pennsylvania, as in many states, people do not know what's going into the drilling fluids because that's protected as corporate trade secrets under law. So what happened is doctors that might even suspect that a person living, let's say, 500 yards from a well might have a health problem related to that well and air pollution had to figure that out to begin with. Now, if they did figure it out, then they had to go to the gas companies and sign a non-disclosure statement saying that in exchange for us finding out what all these drugs are and all these toxic chemicals are that you have shoved into the earth, we won't tell anybody, not the patient, not other specialists, not the public health departments. And this particular gag order is really outrageous that we are not told, the public is not told what is going into the fluids. Now, the industry says, well, only less than 0.5% of all the fluids are toxic. That is true because they have to use about 5 to 10 million gallons of water, which tend to be more or less pure. But when you think about 100,000 gallons of toxic fluids and carcinogens, that alone is not a good number.
It definitely alone, it's not a good number. And have you heard anything through your research of health effects that have happened to the people around them?
Yeah, in the book I have a whole lot of documentation from scientists and physicians and people who have been actively trying to get the information, the data, and doing peer review journal articles about health effects. And this, of course, is always being compromised by the front groups for the oil and gas industry that says, well, this isn't really proven. Well, I'm going to trust maybe a PhD in biology more than I will a PR person from the gas industry. Also in Pennsylvania, there was a $2 million a year health registry that was set up for public health to document any public health issues that, say, a group of people, let's say outside of Pittsburgh, are not isolated, that public health officials can make connections and find out what the problems are throughout the state and try to solve these problems. The legislature finally passed that. Governor Corbett vetoed it at the last minute. $2 million now. This is also reasons that we have doubts about if they're really serious about protecting the public health, because this is the same governor that extended a $1.65 billion tax credit to a foreign drilling company in the Pittsburgh area as a tax credit. the $2 million would not have been paid for by the taxpayers even. That would have come out of revenue generated by the oil and gas industry. But apparently the governor thought it's better not to let the public health develop so that we don't know what's going on.
So they're basically hiding really what's happening just so the oil companies can keep making money. Here's one other question before we're going to close to taking a break. Thinking about the effects that are happening with this in different circumstances. Once they frack and all of it's pretty much taken out of the ground, what do you think is going to happen to the environment and the area once it's all done? 20 years, you think? How long will it take to...
Well, a couple things, and we have experience here with the coal industry that kept saying, we're going to dig under the ground, then when we run out of that, we're going to strip the ground, and everything's going to be restored just the way as before, and we know that was wrong. Same thing with this fracking industry. When they plug up the wells, and there's still several 100,000 wells throughout the country that have not been plugged up adequately and can still leak. We're still seeing the fact that the ground is not going to be able to be fertile enough to have crops for several years. Certainly if we have the droughts in the Southwest, the farmers aren't going to be able to do anything because most of the water is going to the fracking industry, which is paying more for the water than the farmers can. Oh. So we're seeing that problem. Roads that are built that bisect public lands, and the problem there is, do we just undo the roads?
Right, exactly, yeah. So when we get back, Walter, we're going to really touch base on the other parts of the country, areas that have been doing fracking for a longer period than Pennsylvania, and what some of the effects are. You're watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Everyone is welcome to Bethel Park Volunteer Fire Company's first annual Oktoberfest and Monte Carlo night. It'll be held on Saturday, October 18th at the Bethel Park Community Center. Festivities include a live DJ, 50-50 raffle, and much more. Tickets are $25 and can be purchased by calling firefighter Eva Parker at 412-758-0917 or Deputy Chief Rob Nestrich at 412-862-1339. You must be at least 21 years old to attend. One ticket for only $25 buys you all the food and drink you want, plus a night filled with fun, laughter, and games. We'll see you at the first annual Oktoberfest and Monte Carlo night at the Bethel Park Community Center, 5151 Park Avenue on October the 18th. All proceeds benefit the Bethel Park Volunteer Fire Department. Special thanks to our sponsors, Pasta 2, Virgili Beer, Pepsi, Lowe's, Bethel Park Printing, and Kogo's. See you Saturday, October 18th.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show. I have to get used to saying this, television, radio, all in one. Fantastic conversation we're having with Walter Brasch, author of Fracking Pennsylvania, and we're learning really about some of the areas that people, the talking points of the oil companies and people making money on this. It's safe, it's not going to hurt the environment. We're taking all the extra precautions that nothing will happen and that people make money and there's more jobs. Well, we've really touched talking about the specifics. Now I want comparisons. Pennsylvania to other states that might have been doing fracking for longer periods. Walter, how long has Pennsylvania been fracking for?
Really about 2008 or so. It's really a new process. The industry says we've been fracking since the late 40s. It's more than 60 years. It's really safe. Well, that's one of those half-truths. Yes, technically we have been fracking since the late 40s, but that's called vertical fracking. It's a whole different process. This is horizontal fracking. It requires more water. Vertical requires maybe 50, 60, 70,000 gallons of water. This requires up to 21 million gallons of water per well, depending upon the geology. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 million, but it's always at least about that. It requires far more chemicals to go into the earth. It requires far more proppants, which is silica sand that's being mined out of Wisconsin and Minnesota at the moment. So really, what we're talking about is really from about 2005, 2006, 2008, the very beginnings of this. So even in the other states, they're about the same place that Pennsylvania was. Pennsylvania right now is the leading producer of natural gas, but the reality is the corporations are not stupid. When the sweet spots are taken up, when the gas starts drying up, they're going to be out of Pennsylvania. They're going to forget about us, just like the lumber companies came in the early 1800s and mid-1800s to take down all the trees that they could, and they left. The oil companies, Pennsylvania was the site of their first oil companies. Same thing there. Nuclear power, the first commercial nuclear plant was built in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Pennsylvania has a long history of energy companies coming in, especially during a bad economy, convincing people that there's going to be jobs, and then they pack up and leave. So right now we're looking at Pennsylvania as a boom, but people don't realize that booms always go bust. North Dakota right now is the boom industry for oil. That will go bust eventually. There aren't any more dinosaurs willing to die for our needs.
Definitely. So when you talk about that oil and how once they're gone, or lumber once they're gone, have you seen some of the other states from your research in the book that have had more effects to the overall well-being of that community compared to PA that have doing it a little longer?
Yeah, the larger shales had been in Texas, Barnett, Eagle Ford, and some others, and they're starting to close down now. Of the major shales throughout the entire country, really only about 3 are in production of significance. The rest are either in decline or very insignificant, like a new shale in West Virginia that's going to start being fracked next year. Is going to produce very little gas, but it's still counted as a shale. So really, there's only about 3 that are really strong. And most of the others are in decline at the moment. Texas, Oklahoma. Part of the problem, too, is that the Southwest has this huge drought. The Colorado River is down. The dams are down. California, in the Central Valley, which is one of the richest agricultural regions in the entire country, is experiencing a drought. And yet the oil and gas companies are purchasing more and more water, and they're doing more fracking, and we're seeing the problems that result from this.
It's definitely disappointing in so many ways. But I'm going to take the other side of this story in this after we go all the area and issues that definitely you're covering in your book. So you're concerned definitely about the environment, health effects on human beings and animals, and definitely looking at that this is not the economic boom that they're promising, that it's only short-lived. Once they're in and out. It's almost like going to be like a ghost town in certain ways in areas that were not highly populated. The population keeps running in, and it becomes a ghost town after it's finished, right?
Absolutely. Another issue that comes up is that everybody says, well, gas is clean energy, as opposed to the dirty energy of coal and oil. The reality is methane, which is the primary element that's being brought up, the compound that's being brought up from the ground, is more dangerous to our environment than coal, because the methane molecule will trap carbon dioxide. And so what the scientists have shown is that the more gas that you bring up into the atmosphere, the more destruction of our ozone layer. Right. And one of the things that contributes to that is what we call flaring. And all the gas companies do this, is that when you have excess gas, you have to flare it or burn it into the atmosphere. You can't just trap it and put it into a storage bin at U-Haul or whatever. Yeah. So what they do is when they have the excess gas, they flare it into the atmosphere. The methane traps carbon dioxide, and it's much more dangerous. It burns clean on the ground, but and it is better than having oil in your car, I guess. Yeah. But the question is, what if we had developed years and years ago solar energy for automobiles? What if we developed all other kinds of energy? But we've been oil dependent for so long that it's just become a problem of over and over again. The auto people have tied into the gas companies, and we put gas into our cars.
We're talking to Walter Brasch, author of Fracking Pennsylvania, and you're on the Neil Haley Show. And so far we've gotten pretty much the areas of your book. Anything else that you discovered that we haven't not talked about yet?
Yeah, two things actually. The impact upon people who don't live near wells. Now, about 15 million people live within 1 mile of an active well pad. Right. Okay. But if you don't, you have exposure also, because coming out of, say, the Bakken Shale out of North Dakota, there's a huge number of trains that come right down Middle America to the ports of the Atlantic coast, Philadelphia especially, and the Gulf Coast. In the past year, we have had more oil spills than the previous 40 years from the trains. That's because these trains are carrying 100 tanker cars now. And the tanker cars are what we call DOT 111s, Department of Transportation 111s. They're no longer being manufactured because the department says that they are not suitable for carrying oil, that they have a number of weaknesses. We've seen explosions. We've seen deaths. One town lost 47 people when a train exploded. And we're seeing that problem. We're seeing oil spills and gas spills. You can't go a day without hearing about a gas explosion somewhere in the country. So that alone is a problem. About half of all the pipes are at least 50 years old. They're corroded because why spend money to upgrade pipes if you don't have to? It takes away the bottom line.
To make money. That's pretty much the bottom line. And this is
absolutely.
The oil companies continue to make more money than they've already made in different ways. And looking at, is there one more area that you cover in your book?
Well, for instance, the Empire Builder is a train that comes out of Chicago going toward the upper West Coast, Oregon and Washington. At one time, passenger trains always had priority on tracks over freight trains. Right. It's been reversed now. And that Empire Builder is often running several hours late because they're being put on side tracks to allow the freight trains carrying the oil to pass, because that's how important the gas and the oil is. I also talked in the book an awful lot about the protest movement, which is having to deal with social media, which is dealing with music and theater and stage-ins. The gas companies spend an awful lot of money on advertising and promotion. There's no way to counter that. It's like the old days when the tobacco companies were spending billions on advertising and telling us how wonderful tobacco was. So we talk about the anti-fracking movement and what they've been doing in order to develop even a public awareness campaign, because certainly I've noticed with the establishment media, and I've been in the establishment media for so long, so I'm part of it,
yes.
That the establishment media have not done a good job of informing the public about the problems.
Again, who knows what the reasons are and things like that. Walter, where can we purchase your book and learn more about you?
Oh, fantastic. Fracking Pennsylvania, you can get it through Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or the publisher's website, which is Greeley, Greeley, and Stone, Stone, GreeleyandStone.com. I know there's a discount on it at the moment. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your independent bookstore, if they don't have it, they can get it.
Also, what would you say to the people that are, putting all this propaganda out and say, well, why are you doing this, Walter? We don't believe you, and we're going to continue this fight. What would you say for the people on your side and also the people on the other side? Like 1 minute to answer that question.
Okay. The people on the other side, all they have to do is, I don't care whether they believe me or not. The book is fully documented with over 1,500 attributions. So if they don't want to believe me, that's fine with me. They can believe whatever they want to. But I believe that at least the word should be out there, that they have the opportunity to read it and discuss it. And so, the book, like I said, the book is fully documented. It's not just things that I just made up on a weekend because I didn't have anything better to do.
Definitely. Well, Walter, thanks for calling, and best of luck to you. Thanks again.
And thank you very much.
All right, take care. Okay, bye-bye. You're watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Today we're going to inform you about heart attacks. The symptoms of a heart attack are chest pain, tightness, erratic breathing, fatigue, palpitations, heavy sweating, and lightheadedness.
The risk factor of heart attacks are increasing age, tobacco usage, and physical inactivity, triglycerides, obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure. In addition, having a family history of heart attacks also serves as a warning sign.
Eating well, exercising, and avoiding tobacco usage are all methods of preventing heart attacks.
Remember that not all heart attacks have clear warning signs. Some heart attacks just feel like severe indigestion. If you're experiencing the symptoms of a heart attack, call 911 or 412-833-2000 immediately. For more information, visit www.heart.org.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show. Just an unbelievable conversation with Walter Brasch. I'm not all sold on this. I want people to tell me by emailing me at nhaley@totaltutor.org or going to my website, totaltutor.net, and tell me what you think of this fracking issue. Because I am going to have to bring somebody on who's pro-fracking. It's because, again, I'm not going, as a journalist, I refuse, especially as an educator, we need both sides of the story. Well, I was excited to have this week's Neil Haley Show. Every week, a new show. So you got to make sure you go ahead and check your cable provider if you get the Neil Haley Show or all over the world. Good talking to you guys, and we will talk again next week. Good day, everyone.